Welcome back. So in the previous videos we have talked about the use state, the use effect, the use reference or the use ref, and now we can see we are starting to get more and more familiar with React hooks. Of course, we do have more complex examples when we build a real authentication system in the next section, but now we just want to understand each hook individually. It is time for us to focus on the use context, one of the most powerful state management hook. Okay, and by the way, if you don't familiar with the state management concept, it is basically about thinking how to manage your data inside any React application. Okay, again, let's go ahead and understand why would you use something like the use context. Sometimes, like, you want to share piece of data across the entire application. Let me show you that. For example, you can see here on the navigation we have this cart or shopping cart icon, and we have this count as well right here, the count which has 4 items. Okay, you can see I can change this number right here. For example, if I delete this one right here, we can see it will be deleted from here, from this page, from the card page, as well as from the navigation right here. So the data in our application is in sync. When I change it in a place, it's going to be changed in the entire application. So if I go back, for example, to the books page right here, and we can see this books right here, or this book right here, improve your child mindset. We can see this icon right here. It's a colorful icon, so we know that this item is in our shopping cart. So if I click it again, we can see we have removed this item from our shopping cart, and we can see the count went down to 2. So we can see I can change the number of our items in our shopping cart from the entire application manually. For example, if I go here to the details, I can add it from here, and I can change the amount, right? So you can see the data. I can change this piece of state from the entire application, and this is the power of using the use context. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Let's go ahead and understand how to use the use context. Here we have our previous example or our code. I have just cleaned it up a little bit. Again, the use context is a little bit, it needs some structure. We need to write some code in order for us to get started. But again, with that, let's go ahead and understand that one by one. So the first thing first, I'm going to create a folder, call it context. Okay, like so. And here, I'm just going to add a new file. Okay, you can call it, for example, auth.js, because again, I'm going to add a piece of state to, let's say, handle whether the user is logged in or not. And I want this to be like, I want it to be general, so the entire application knows about it. Okay, so very, very simple. I want to, the first thing that we want to do is to go ahead and we want to go ahead and create a context. And the way that you can create a context is basically you can invoke the create context, which is a function from React. So I'm just going to create a variable, call it auth context, like so. It should be equal to, you can either type react.create context, okay, or you can import this part right here. So you don't need to, let's say, you don't need to type React, but again, it is a matter of your own preference. So I'm just going to show you both ways. So you can type create context from React. Okay, so you can either do it like this, or you can type react.create context, and you don't need to import anything. It's just a matter of what you want to prefer. Okay, and again, we have created our context. I'm going to talk about more details. What is the initial value? Any context or like any hook that you can use. Most of the hooks, we can give it an initial value so we can use it. Okay, for example, with the use state, we can give it an initial value so we can store it. Okay, because the benefit of the use state hook is to store values, so the initial value will be stored. The benefit of the create context, it is to share data. So we can give it an initial value to share it. Okay, but again, I'm just gonna leave it empty. I will show you that later on. For the time being, we can export default our auth context. Okay, and now we have created our context, and that's it. We have created our context. Let's go ahead and see how we can use this part. So the way that you would use it is to go ahead to your app.js file. Okay, inside your app.js, here is what we are going to do. We are going to go ahead and do some work right here. The app.js, it will be the wrapper for all the components that we have in our application. And even if we can see that we have only these two components, but in the future, even if you decide to use React Router to do anything, you will still place them inside your app.js. So that's why the app.js, it is the place where we wrap all our components, okay? And since we want to share our piece of state, our context to the entire application, so the best place it is to share it in the app.js. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, I want to first of all, we need to import our context, okay? So auth context, in order for us to use it, of course, so we need to import it. I'm gonna go to the context and then auth, like so. Now we have it right here. Of course, we need to import something. Oh, we have a problem right here that says React is not defined in our context. Okay, yeah, of course, because we are trying to use React, but we didn't import it. That has to do with my, by the way, that's a really silly problem. Anyways, now we have imported React. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to the app.js. We can see we have imported the auth context. Now let's go ahead and use it. So I want to wrap everything that you are returning in your app.js with the auth context. Okay, so auth context like so. Okay, so I'm gonna add our part. So again, we are wrapping all the components. I'm gonna remove this part so it's confusing. We are wrapping our entire application with the auth context, right? Cool. So that's really cool. So what you need to know, what you need to know about context is that we have two types of, let's say, that's important pieces that will make the context works. The first one is a provider, which is the component that share the data. Okay, it's what we call it a provider. So it's the component that's responsible for sharing the data. And we have then the other piece, it is the consumer, which is the component that need to consume that data. Okay, so for example, if we take, by the way, don't ignore this error, we are gonna fix it. But again, for example, here we can see that in our shopping cart, here we are trying, in our navigation, we are trying to display a data. So we are consuming the number of our items in our shopping cart. Okay, so we can see we are consuming that. Okay, however, the provider for this component right here is any component that manipulate, that change the data. Okay, so for example, I can add this item right here. So I'm trying to provide, so that the books page right here is trying to provide our navigation with some data. In this case, I have just added right here one item. Okay, and by the way, here I am in the books page. If I remove it, okay, we can see we have manipulate our item count in our navigation. So the only benefit of the navigation here on the top, it is to consume and display the number of items in our shopping cart. And some components have the ability to provide or to manipulate the items right here. For example, I can delete. Okay, so again, this is these two concepts that you need to understand, is that we have a provider and we have a consumer. In this case, the app.js right here will be a provider, for it will send the data to the entire application. Okay, so yeah, the way that you specify which component is a provider is very simply here. After your auth context, you need to type .provider, and of course the closing tag should be matching. Okay, oops, so auth context dot provider, like so. So now we are trying to provide all the components with whatever we have it right here. Okay, so what is the value that I should pass to the entire list right here? Well, very simply, you can specify it over here as a value attribute. So I will specify, for example, let's say an object, okay, or string, or for example, I am the data, okay, like so. Just for the time being, we can share a text, but we are going to take it to the next level and share more complex stuff. If you go back to our application, we can see nothing got changed, nothing happened, because what we have did, we have just provide all the components with this piece of state, with this piece of data. Let's go ahead and consume it. Let's go ahead and see how we can go ahead and display something, or get it at least. So I want you to go ahead to any component that you have, but one condition that you need to follow, or one rule that you need to follow. A component that need to consume this data should be right here, should be wrapped with our auth context provider. In this case, our hook state has been wrapped with our auth context, so now it has the ability to consume this data. Okay, the way that we can do that, first of all, we are going to use the use context, okay, the use context hook. So what we can do, I'm just going to say auth context, okay, it should be equal to the use context hook, like so. First of all, it will be imported on the top automatically, and we have the use context, and we have to invoke it, and here we have just to give it the context that we want to consume. In this case, our auth context that we have created, it will import it automatically, and now we have just added right here. Okay, if I go and say log auth context, like so, the variable that we have right here, you will see something that is really interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead to the inspect page, and we can see I am the data, okay, because we are trying to consume the auth context. Again, I'm gonna explain what we have in a second. So the first thing first, we have created a context utilizing the create context function from React, okay, and we have called it the auth context, and we have exported as the default export for this file. Okay, then we went back to our app.js, and we have imported our context, and we have wrapped the entire application with this auth context provider, because this will be the provider for any data that we want to share. And we have given the data that we want to share as an attribute called value. By the way, it must called value, because this is the way that works. And you can give it any value that you want to share over here. Okay, then we have utilized this piece of state, or we have consumed this piece of state utilizing the use context, and we have given the context that we want to use, because again, we can create multiple contexts as we will show you later. Okay, and we have just logged this to the console. Okay, that's pretty much it. So again, for example, if you go back and you want to share an object instead, so if you want to share an object, you have to give it color braces, because this is a dynamic value. I just want to say, for example, is logged in, okay, is logged in is false, okay, and the user is null. Okay, if we take it like this, and if we go back, we can see we got an object with two properties: is logged in is false, and user is null. That's basically it. We can share any data that we want, really. For example, let me show you another example. I'm gonna import our data from the utility folder that we have created. Okay, data like so. And what I will share also data should be data. Okay, or you can use the ES6 to like make it, you can remove the, if you have the key and the value the same, then you can remove it, but I will keep it because I want to avoid as much questions that you have, guys, as possible. So we can see we got an array. I'm trying to share an array. So if I go to my auth context and I want to say I want the data, okay, that will give me the data, the array itself. And what I can do here, I can go ahead and display it as a length. Okay, for example, I will say auth context dot data dot length. Okay, if we take a look, we will see a number right here, and this is the exact same technique that I have used to implement this count on our shopping cart. Okay, and now whenever I change the value, right, like from any component, it will this component right here will get notified. So that's basically it. This is how easy it is to share data utilizing the create context and the use context. Now I just want to give you some notes. There is a lot of ways that you can implement the same thing that we have did. Okay, you can create the provider and the consumer in a lot of different way. Okay, but for example, one of the ways you could do that, it's to type auth context dot consumer over here. Okay, and that will also give you the same results. Okay, without using the use context. Okay, without doing all these things right here, you could do that. Okay, of course we need to not return it like this. We need to return. Again, I'm not gonna try, for example, to show you all the different ways to achieve the same thing. Okay, I have tried like the easiest way, which is to utilize the use context. Okay, this syntax right here is a little bit like intimidating because you have to keep wrapping your components with subdivs and so on. But again, utilizing the use context is a lot easier. Again, this is the first example. We are going to spend a lot of time with the use context, especially when we are going to build our authentication system, hopefully. And that should be it. In the next video, I will show you a real example about the use context and how to handle, for example, a logged in user and so on. So thank you, my friends, so much for watching. I will see you in another one.